You can't cry over spilled milk. You got to keep going. You got to keep going forward. And I take charge of being me and being in charge of me and who I want to be. And I want to be a nice, kind, loving person. And that's who I'm going to be.
The victims of sexual abuse aren't always children, and they aren't always girls or women. In this episode, Edythe speaks with her guest about the lingering effects of abuse, stereotypes, and healing. And since this episode is of a sensitive nature, so listener discretion is advised.
Hi folks, I'm your host Edythe Richards, and you may know me from my podcast series, Myers-Briggs Question Corner, or my website at topcareer.com. I've spent the last 20 years of my career helping people get smart about their careers. And I've found that lots of smart people aren't successful. Why is that? I'm convinced it's due to emotional intelligence. In EQ at Work, I'm bringing you inspiring people and messages to help you get smart about your emotions. 70% of adults in the U.S. alone have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives, according to the National Council for Behavioral Health. Trauma occurs when a person is overwhelmed by events or circumstances and responds with intense fear, horror, and helplessness. There's a direct link between trauma and health conditions such as diabetes, COPD, heart disease, cancer, and high blood pressure. Trauma is also a risk factor in nearly all behavioral health and substance use disorders. Unfortunately, there's often a resistance to the process of healing due to the intense emotions which the person has to relive as a part of recovery. Yet nothing else will yield better results than healing the wounds of trauma. My guest today has gone through many traumatic events. Tom's recovery is ongoing, but perhaps more than any other person I've met, has become a master at resilience. And that is only possible through consistent, mindful use of emotional intelligence. Tom, welcome to EQ at Work. I'm so pleased you're here today to talk about a very difficult topic, and I'm truly honored that you've agreed to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me, Edythe.
You are most welcome. So can we start by you sharing a bit with us about where you are now and what you're doing?
Okay, now I live in a cabin where I'm pretty isolated.
So you're kind of living off the grid?
I'm living off the grid as much as I can. Yes, ma'am.
Wow. How did that happen? How did you come to be where you are now?
So it started as a vacation home in 2004, but through some intense counseling and such, I became aware of some problems that I had growing up that has caused me to move to an isolation type way of life, away from people.
Wow. To someone like me, that doesn't sound like a positive place to be, but you almost sound like you're content.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I don't have issues with airplanes and helicopters flying over all day. I don't have jackhammers beating on the streets all day. I don't have ambulances and fire trucks all day and all night running by my house.
Yeah, so it's nice and quiet.
Nice and quiet.
That's good. So you mentioned that there were some events that led you there to where you are now. And I know you've shared some events that have happened in your childhood to me that really served as a very wobbly foundation.
That's true.
Yeah. And using this metaphor, you've kind of spent your life rebuilding that foundation.
This is true. I can give you some history if you like.
Sure. Whatever you're willing to share.
So, unbeknownst to me, for many years, I was sexually assaulted by a babysitter when I was like 7 years old, and she was like 14. And from there, I was assaulted in the military sexually. And then I've had situations where the law has lied against me in the court of law. And I just feel like isolation keeps me away from the evils of our ways.
That's a lot to go through. You were 7, you said, when the...
Original, yes.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask how old you are now?
I'm 55.
Okay. So that's a lot to live with for all of those years.
Yes, ma'am. But as your topic of emotional intelligence, I've been given some skills. I don't know if it's from spiritualness or psychological counseling, medications, but I found a way to live life in a way that's happy for me. I don't carry all the hurts and pains of it anymore. I've been able to let it go.
Well, I'm so pleased to hear that, but I imagine it's taken you a while to get to this point.
Oh, I'm not done with the journey. It's definitely an ongoing process.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, would you be open to talking about how these events have affected you personally and professionally?
Sure. So I was involved with the military sexual trauma group at the VA hospital in Washington, D.C., and there was 12 of us in the group, and 11 of us were entrepreneurs. We all worked for ourselves. I thought that to be very interesting, something that you wouldn't necessarily think was related to abuse, lack of trust for authority, but most of us all had jobs working for ourselves, whether it was catering or with me, I did tree service.
Tree service? What's that?
I trained myself how to climb trees and was able to do a great job climbing trees. So I had a little niche where if you didn't need a big tree service, you could just hire a climber to do the job. And that worked pretty good for me.
So if I needed a big tree cut down on my property or something, you're the guy I would call, huh?
Yes, ma'am. My specialty was more, I'd rather do the fine-tuned pruning on fine specimens as dogwoods or redbuds, even a master oak, getting up in there and getting all the dead wood out and cleaning it up and keeping it beautiful would be my first choice over cutting it down.
Wow. A lot of physical work that's involved with that, huh?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I envy those days that I had the energy. Actually, in my earlier life, I despised the word lazy. I thought that was, somebody said I was lazy, I would be very upset with them. And now if you say I'm lazy, I'm going to agree with you. I don't know.
I guess that happens with age, huh? So how long have you been doing the tree service?
Well, I've actually not been in the tree service now for about 5 or 6 years, but I did it for probably close to 30 years of my life.
Wow. So that was your business. And when you say you were an entrepreneur, that's kind of what you did.
That was I worked for myself. And I helped other people that were in need. I was always trying to find people that were homeless or something that needed work. And then I would pay them, more than normal rates.
Wow. So to help with the tree service, you would go out and recruit homeless people that you met?
That's correct.
Oh, nice.
And then I paid them above, the going rate because I know how it is to be close to homeless.
Oh, yeah?
I lost my job. First, I had a gentleman that I loaned my truck to. I did a tree job, and my helper wanted the firewood, so I let him use my truck and trailer to go get the firewood. And then returning home, he decided to run from the police and destroyed my car, or my truck and trailer, and all my tools.
Oh my gosh.
And that was right when the recession started hitting. So I never really recovered from that, replacing my trailer, truck, saws, ladders, everything. I never. And then I got a job working for Verizon as an outside plant technician, working as a lineman basically, and was laid off after 3 years. And at that point, I was unemployed for 36 months or so.
Oh, wow. So even though you've done the tree service for 30 plus years, you've had other jobs as well.
That's right. Well, just at the tail end here. And I was in the military, I've said before. And when I first got out of the military, I worked for a grocery store. Then I was a full-time dad for a while. That's when I got into tree service. But since then, I went to Verizon.
Okay. And what were you doing with Verizon?
It's an outside plant technician is the title of the job.
Okay.
Okay, so the first part, I worked twice there. The first time, as in my primary job was running fiber optics. And then I was laid off, and then I was rehired by Verizon 3 years later. That primary job was the electric company would come by and replace the telephone pole, and they would move the electric lines from the old pole to the new pole. They would leave the bottom Comcast, Verizon, and sometimes the city or the state lines on the pole. And I would come by and transfer from the old pole to the new pole.
I see.
And I would do 2-3 of those every single day till I was let go again.
Yeah. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, I can completely relate to this myself. You don't have that regular stream of income. So you have to pick up these other jobs. And then sometimes you'll be able to get the health insurance and all the perks that come with those jobs. But it sounds like from what you said before that entrepreneurship is better suited for you.
Yeah, well, that's been one very good benefit that I've had is I've had military benefits through it all. Whether I was Verizon or whether I was working for myself, I always had, from my disability in the military, the sexual trauma, I've always had free medical care.
So the military provided you with the medical care because of that?
Yes, ma'am. And I still get it today.
Wow.
And the rest of my life is all my medical is taken care of. Psychiatric is taken care of. Psychological is taken care of. My dental's taken care of. My vision's taken care of. My hearing's taken care of. Everything's taken care of.
That's a great benefit.
That's a great benefit.
And part of that was also the group recovery that you were in?
Yes, that was a military sexual trauma group that I was involved in. And that was a blessing. It was actually the first time I was ever able to talk in public about the sexual trauma that I endured.
I find it really interesting what you said as well. 11 out of the 12 participants were all entrepreneurs.
There was other things, and I wish I could think of them, but there was many other things. There was similarity between us.
Yeah.
How we feel towards police, for example.
Oh, yeah?
The distrust for authority
Mm-hmm.
was one of those that ran rampant.
How do you even begin to come to terms with that?
Well, there's an aspect that's very spiritual. You have to have faith in a higher power.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm Christian or Buddha or Jewish or anything. I just have a higher power that has a tendency to only give you what you can handle. You know, you got to have faith in your higher power, keeping you going in a positive direction. When things happen, you try to make the best of it. Try to think of a way to make it some way that you're learning.
Yeah, it's almost a sense of optimism.
It's definitely optimism. You can't wallow in the negativity.
Yeah.
That just will eat you up inside. You got to stay positive. And that's not always easy, but I force myself. You know, sometimes when I wake up in the morning time, I have to think about all the things I'm thankful for. You know, whether that's just toilet paper or my kids or my mom or my fiance and my puppies. And there's a lot of things to be thankful for. And during the coronavirus here, you know, I'm isolated, which I love, but the coronavirus has made everybody need to be isolated.
Well, I think one thing that especially somebody like me doesn't think about being thankful for is toilet paper. And for you, living off the grid like you are, I mean, it's you've got to be thankful for that.
I have 200 rolls of toilet paper.
Wow.
I'm not going to ever be short as you can, but I've had to go to McDonald's and use napkins.
Oh, wow.
It's been rough days. You just got to keep your chin up and keep moving forward and don't let, you know, everybody in life has problems. Race isn't a part of it. Financial isn't part of it. You know, although if you have a lot of money, you don't have problems with paying bills. Probably a big reducer, but nobody's born in a rose garden, I heard one song say.
So that's a good quote. It's something I think the average person, we forget to do it. We forget to just to sit there and be thankful for all the good in our lives, whether it's toilet paper, but you just had a whole list of things there that you were thankful for.
Well, sometimes, though, it's hard to think of any of them but the toilet paper. As time goes on, your list gets longer. Well, that's how it unfolded for myself.
Yeah, it's great you have this strategy. I can't even begin to think about what you were saying there with the authority figures in your life, because we've all, just in our day-to-day lives, we have to contend with authority figures, our bosses at work. You mentioned the police. We encounter law enforcement every day, and all of these events that are going on now. So if you're already set up with this foundation that you have to distrust authority, it must have been difficult to come to terms with that.
At this point in his story, Tom talked about how his childhood was spent moving from place to place, as his stepfather was in the army. Ironically, Tom talked about having friendly relationships with the police in several of his neighbourhoods, most notably when he lived in Maryland. It wasn't until his mother moved his family to a low-income neighbourhood in Virginia when Tom was 16 that he began having negative encounters with law enforcement.
My mom got a place in a low-income place, and I wasn't even there a week, and I had a police officer telling me to freeze, shining his lights on me, and I stopped. He raised my hands like he says, and then he comes and he slams me down on the ground real hard, and then says, sorry, you fit the description of somebody else that was involved with a robbery or something.
And this was when you were in the low-income place?
In the low-income home, yeah. And the reason I was telling you about living at my grandfather's is because it really baffled my psyche why the police in Maryland were so nice and kind and playing basketball and being kind. And then when I get to Virginia and Fairfax, the police were like really mean. And that was just one situation. Another time I was pulled over. They thought I was a bank robber. The cop was only on the force for 2 weeks. I thought he was pulling me over because I didn't have a tag on the back of the car. I worked at Central Motors for a summer when I first got out of the military, and I was driving their car, and I had a dealer tag up in the windshield, so I was showing them, and they're taking the gun holster, unsnapping, and yelling at me, and again, take me out of the car, slam me on the ground, put their knee in my back and my neck. It's 100 degrees outside. There's glass and all these small rocks there. They closed Route 1 down and brought a bank teller. Thank goodness she said it wasn't me.
So that was your second incident with the police and a mistaken identity.
Oh, well, there's many more. I've been pulled over, for somebody thinking I was dumping trash illegally. And I had an orange van with a pop-up trailer camper that I turned. And he said somebody would fit in my description. Nobody had that description.
Wow.
Hey, but this last event that's 2 years ago, I had 2 police officers lie against me in the court of law.
That's crazy.
I was putting my life on the line for this country, for us to have a free country, and for police to get in front of the judge and lie against me. I found so appalling, so horrific, so heinous. And this was right before the Black Lives Matter movement. I feel because I'm white and they're treating me like crap. I'm sure that the inner city black youth is getting it so much worse with police lying. New York has a word for it, test the lying. And what's happened is the police defense will show video from, let's say, a hotel that disputes the police story. And the prosecutor only dismisses it. The police officer that filed the arrest and all that doesn't get any consequence whatsoever. It's horrific and it's rampant. We're worried about police killing people. Yeah, that's a major problem. But there's a ton of stuff underlying that they're doing every day and getting away with it. Follow the Innocence Project. Unfortunately, I never heard of them before my wrongful conviction. But it's sad to me, and it's going to be where I put my money when I'm dead. Sending all my money to the Innocence Project, because they're letting people out that's been prosecuted, found guilty, and thrown in jail for 20 and 30 years. And DNA is exonerating them. And it happens every day. There more and more are getting exonerated. And these police officers that lied against me, I just can't comprehend why they would do that. What motivates a police officer to lie against somebody? There must be some kind of institutional thing going on that gives these guys that get convictions, and the prosecutors too, they get convictions, that gives them data boy points. And that's not fair to the innocent.
And you've got to wonder, like, why me? I mean, you're somebody who, was minding your own business. You got through school.
Yes, ma'am.
You went to the military to serve your country. And then, you've been trying to help people. You've got to wonder.
I had many people. I had 20 people from firefighters and other professionals, lawyers and stuff that wrote letters on my behalf. Maybe I should tell you what happened because I'm not 100% innocent. I did mess up.
Okay.
I was in a parking lot and I was going around a car that was going, a truck actually, that was going like 2 miles an hour. When I was trying to go around him, he speeded up and I just thought he didn't see me. So I honked my horn and let him know I was coming back over. And he had some speed bumps in front of him. And I thought he was going to slow down, but he didn't. And he hit me and I hit somebody else. And they didn't want to talk to anybody. I tried to communicate with them, but they didn't want to talk to me until the police got there. I went and I changed my tire. I did a whole bunch of other stuff, put the tire back in, test drove the car in the parking lot. And I had food in the oven and I went home and I turned the stove off and was heading back when the police showed up. And they gave me 2 tickets for hit and run. I didn't leave information. This is true. And that's what they prosecuted me for. But the second part of the law says that if you can't be in touch with the police, I should report to the police immediately. And I never had the opportunity to do that. And the first police officer lied and said I told him that I left immediately after I changed my tire, which was not true. But that gave justification for them to say I was running from the accident when I stayed there for an hour after the collision and was worried about my house burning down. And then the other police officer told him that I didn't want to do a breathalyzer because I didn't know how drunk I was, which was totally fabricated. I didn't admit to drinking anything. One of the witnesses said I was intoxicated at the scene, but there was no evidence of that. And the cop got up in my face and was shining light in my face, and I was asking what he was doing. And he started spitting all over me. Can't you follow simple instructions? There's a whole bunch of his spits coming all over my face. And here I was being cooperative and telling him I was in the parking lot and I was involved in the collision and I'm telling him everything. And then he was getting rude to me. And then he told the judge that I told him I didn't want to do the breathalyzer because I didn't know how drunk I was. And that wasn't true either. They both lied to try to get their convictions to stick.
So you weren't intoxicated?
No, not at all. I hadn't had anything to drink. Zero.
Had zero to drink. You did just forget to leave your information at the scene, but
I didn't actually know that it was a law that I had to leave all that stuff. When I was younger again, when I was like 18, I was involved with an accident in a parking lot. I just got this car. It was an old Dart. And I just got the car. I was a kid, could barely have insurance on it. And I got the minimum liability and I'm in a parking lot. And here comes this guy, clobbers me. I'm not moving at all. I'm standing still. And the police come and the police tells me that it's a parking lot. You know, I got to take care of me and they got to take care of them. So when this accident happened in the parking lot, I wasn't 100% aware of the law that I had to leave all that information. I watched them take a picture of my license plate and I had written down their tag number. So I knew I had a way of being in touch with them.
It's hard when things like this happen. I think the average person just does not know about all these different facets of the law. And I mean, how can we know every little thing that we're supposed to know?
That goes on even much deeper than a little conversation we can have here because they got lawyers that just do the Constitution. They got lawyers that just do internet or international law, and they got domestic law, and they got divorce law. They got criminal law. Civic law. They got so many different laws that lawyers don't have all of the answers.
Yeah, there's specialties out there, and you really do have to be a specialist in so many ways today. All these incidents with law enforcement, it's got to make you wonder, what is it about me that seems to cause this to happen?
I've asked that question to myself a million times over my life. I think it has to do with that I look low class. I'm not a person that cares about looking like brand new clothes every time I go outside. Okay, I don't mind wearing holy clothes or things like that. And I think that the society has a way of being judgmental to that.
Yet you have done so many things, I think, that an average person has not done. You served in the military, and after the military, did you go to school or?
Yes, ma'am. I actually started out at community college, and then I moved on to get a social work degree.
So you got your bachelor's degree.
I have my back. It took me 7 years. I'm a little slow. That was full time, hard as I could, 7 years.
Well, a lot of people take a long time to get a degree, there's always starts and stops. But, the fact that you set out to do that and you did it and you have your bachelor's degree now.
Yes, ma'am. And I really appreciate it. I really thought I wanted to help other people that were coming up in a difficult situation like me. But I found that the people in the professional social workers don't like people that actually work their way up. They like the studious type of social workers.
What does that mean?
Well, when I had my first off, I had a very difficult time finding work as a social worker with only a bachelor's degree. When you have many colleges around here pumping out hundreds and hundreds of master's degree students working for way littler than they should be.
Yeah.
So, but I found that the field of social work for me, they didn't necessarily like my type, that were struggling, that came up on their own bootstraps. Even though that they're helping people, let's say in food stamps or in troubled kids or mental retardation, even though they're helping people that way, they do it not from a point of view where they've been there. It's from a studious point of view.
Now, that's surprising to me because there's a school of thought that if you've experienced something yourself, you're better equipped to help others who are in that challenging situation.
That's what I would think, too. And when I was actually in the work of practicing social work, people would say to me, how do you know? Have you ever been addicted to drugs? Or how do you know? You ever been abused by your father? And I never could really answer them that what my truth was, but that was a concern for a lot of my clients that I did deal with. As they didn't think I could relate to them because I hadn't necessarily experienced their experience. People are abused. People, are in terrible situations and grow up in rough times. And it's very difficult for people like me to get to the point of getting a bachelor's degree. It's very, very difficult. Not having resources financially and such. It's a very, very tough journey. And the military was very grateful in helping me.
Edythe and Tom talked for a bit about the costs of higher education and how today's young people are riddled with student debt. Tom's sons are now in college, and of course their futures are a huge concern for him. One positive difference that Tom's kids have is a father who equipped them as best he could with resources to help them solve problems on their own and to know where to go for help when they need. As a father, he provided them with the stable upbringing that he didn't have.
I got married at 32 and had 2 boys. But at that point, still, I wasn't fully aware of my sexual abuse, and it showed its ugly head in my relationship all the time. Actually, still shows its ugly head every once in a while. I'm blessed that my woman now is also going through some of the same trauma I have, so she's very understanding. You can't cry over spilled milk. You got to keep going. You got to keep going forward.
Yeah. And how did you? How have you managed to keep going forward?
That's a great question. There's a part of me that could be hostile and bitter and nasty and be justified for all that. I do have some martial art trainings that's helped discipline that. But I like to be a caring, loving person because that's who I like to be. And I take charge of being me and being in charge of me and who I want to be. And I want to be a nice, kind, loving person. And that's who I'm going to be. And I'm not going to let lying police officers or anybody else out there that might betray me wrong stop me from being who I am. I want to keep being myself. I'm not giving away my power to be anything other than my authentic self.
If you knew of other people who have been in similar positions, do you have any advice for them?
Oh, I got a ton of it. It's okay to ask for help. Okay, get help from a minister. Anybody can go to find a minister that they like, and that's free of charge. And they're very powerful. They can give you really great words of encouragement and help you get from one day to the next. Next thing would be to your own self be true. That's important. Don't let other people control who you are. Be who you want to be no matter what. That's the starter.
I think it's easier said than done for so many of us, even people who have not experienced the depth of trauma that you have. But it's really good advice, especially today.
Oh, thank you. Because like you said, a lot of people have a hard time doing it. So if I hadn't faced these traumas, maybe I would be like other people and not be able to do this. These traumas may be beneficial to me and to help me reassure who I am.
I think we all need that reassurance from time to time. Tom, thank you so much for speaking with us today about some very difficult experiences that you've been through. We're really grateful for your time.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate you giving me a voice out there.
Thank you. You take care.
You too.
Trauma can cause stress and can be linked to grief, but it's not the same as stress or grief, and it manifests differently for everyone. Throughout the time we were talking, Tom referenced his optimistic nature again and again. Optimism is an important element of emotional intelligence, and one might argue the most important element. Optimism is the belief, hope, and confidence that good things will happen in our lives. But it's not just a blind belief that things will turn out for the best. People who are skilled in optimism acknowledge the existence and importance of adversity and choose to draw upon both internal and external resources that can help them cope. Research has demonstrated again and again not just the positive health benefits of optimism, but that people who believe they are able to cope have a positive outlook on life and expect good things to happen because they can control their environments. In Tom's case, he found contentment controlling his environment by living off the grid, but of course that won't work for everyone. While it's clear that being optimistic is beneficial, can we learn to take a more positive perspective? Tom cited 3 things he does on a regular basis that help him to be more optimistic, and as a result have positively contributed to his quality of life. First, he believes in being of service to others. He chose to hire homeless people who needed the work. Offline, he mentioned several groups he regularly volunteers with, and even got his college degree in social work so that he could learn how to better help others. Aside from taking the focus away from your own problems and refocusing on feeling good about helping others, volunteering boosts serotonin levels in your brain, which makes you feel happier. He also mentioned consciously practicing gratitude, and he does this daily. A quick Google search will yield thousands of articles attesting to the power of gratitude on our brains, on our health, and our well-being. Suffice it to say that gratitude has such a powerful impact on our lives because it engages our brains in a virtuous cycle. Once we start seeing things to be grateful for, our brains will start seeing more and more things to be grateful for. And we clearly heard this from Tom. Third, Tom keeps a positive outlook. Stressful events are part of life, but they're also just a blip on the radar. Optimism takes practice, like any other skill. Ultimately, learning to be more optimistic is more than just improving your well-being and being physically healthy. As Martin Seligman, known as the father of modern positive psychology, states, optimism is invaluable for a meaningful life. With a firm belief in a positive future, you can throw yourself into the service of that which is larger than you are.
Thanks for listening to EQ at Work. Find us using the hashtag EQ at Work, or visit our website eqatwork.net. Subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Spreaker, or your favourite podcast platform. We'd love you to leave a rating or review, and if you have a moment, a simple share would be wonderful. Remember, tell your friends. Mastering your emotions matters. Next week, we'll be speaking with Eileen Thorman about her near-death experience and her work with hospice patients. It's an inspiring episode that you won't want to miss.